I never believed in curses, until the night I saw something watching me from the garden, something that stood too tall to be human. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a tree. That's what my brain told me, anyway. Just a shadow. Just a trick of the moonlight behind the fence line. But then the shadow shifted, not in a way that wind would cause, not like something natural swaying in the breeze. It adjusted, ever so slightly, as if it had just remembered I was watching it too. But this isn't where it started. It started 3 days before, with the cabin. Tyler and I had been best friends since 2nd grade. We grew up in a quiet stretch of Arkansas, tucked up against a patch of woods that felt older than the hills themselves. The forest was thick, the kind that swallows noise and always smells like damp bark and slow decay. Nobody really went too deep into it, not unless they were hunting, and even then, folks stuck to the trails. But Tyler wasn't most people, and neither was I. We were 16, bored out of our minds, and had just come off a long week of school, so naturally, we wanted to go exploring. We told our parents we'd be out by the creek near the power line cut, but we kept walking, deeper than either of us had ever been. Past the hollow tree trunk that looked like a face if you squinted. Past the rusted deer stand no one had climbed in decades. We weren't looking for anything in particular, just the thrill of going further than we were supposed to. That's when we found it. The cabin looked like it had been forgotten by time. It was sunken into the earth on one side, its roof half collapsed and covered in moss. The windows were broken, shards of glass clinging to the frame like brittle teeth. There were no tire tracks, no path, no sign anyone had been there in years. And yet, something about it felt wrong the second we stepped on the porch. The air inside was colder than it should have been, even with all the gaps in the walls letting in sunlight. There were books, or what was left of them, scattered across the floor, pages torn and curling with moisture. Furniture lay in splinters, half covered in mildew and spider webs. But what made us stop, what made both of us fall silent, were the carvings. Every wall was covered in symbols. Deep gouges in the wood, some small and clustered, others so large they split the beams. One in particular stood out. It was near the back wall, above what might have been a fireplace once, a single eye, round and wide, with jagged lines sprouting from the top like crooked spider legs. We didn't say anything for a long while. We just stood there, staring at it. Then Tyler laughed. "Dude," he said, nudging me with his elbow. "This is some Blair Witch crap right here." I didn't laugh. I couldn't. "I'm serious," he said, grinning. "Watch this." He'd gotten a shallow cut on his palm from a nail on the porch earlier, nothing serious. But he squeezed it now, and a single drop of blood welled up. Before I could stop him, he reached out and smeared it directly across the eye. "There," he said. "Now it's cursed." I told him he was an idiot. He shrugged it off, like always. We left a few minutes later, joking about tetanus and demon possums, but I kept glancing back at the cabin as we walked away. Something about it felt like it had changed. Not visibly, but atmospherically. The woods felt heavier. Still. Like the trees were listening now. The next morning, Tyler didn't show up to school. His mom called in and said he wasn't feeling well. I figured he was just faking sick to get out of a math test. That night, I was brushing my teeth when I caught something in the corner of my eye through the bathroom window. Our backyard runs straight into the tree line, and just before the darkness gets too thick, there was something. Tall. Towering. Still. At first I thought it was a tree. But then I realized something worse. There was no tree in that spot. And it was watching me. I stood there, toothbrush frozen in my mouth, staring through the fogged-up glass at the thing at the edge of our yard. It didn't move, not even a twitch. It just stood there, legs too thin and too long to be anything natural, its upper half vanishing into the shadow where the moonlight didn't reach. No glow. No reflection. Just the absence of light where its eyes should have been, like two holes burned straight through the night. I must have stared for a full minute before I blinked. When I looked again, it was gone. The rest of the night passed in a fog. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe it had been a post. Or a trick of the light. That's what I wanted to believe. I went to bed, buried under blankets, every creak of the house sounding sharper, more deliberate than usual. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I checked in on Tyler. His mom answered, looking frazzled. She said he still wasn't feeling well, something about a fever, said he'd barely spoken since yesterday, that he just lay in bed muttering about something watching him. I asked if I could see him, but she hesitated, then said no. Said the doctor was coming later that day. I left without pushing it. At school I couldn't focus. I kept staring out the window, glancing at the woods behind the football field, half expecting to see that thing standing just beyond the trees, watching. Always watching. That night, it came back. This time it was standing closer. I saw it from the upstairs window, near the back fence where the grass stops and the tree line begins. I turned off the light, crept closer to the window, barely breathing. It didn't move. Not an inch. It didn't sway in the wind. It didn't blink. I couldn't make out its face, only the vague outline of something impossibly tall, with legs like crooked stilts and a head that always seemed just out of view. But I felt it. I felt those eyes on me. Not like being watched by a person. Not like an animal either. It was deeper than that. More surgical. Like it was studying me. I closed the curtain and sat on my bed, heart hammering in my chest. I wanted to tell my parents. I wanted to scream, cry, do something, but I couldn't explain it. I knew how it would sound. There's a thing in the backyard. Doesn't mean much when you can't describe what it is, or what it wants. And somehow I knew, if I acknowledged it out loud, it would get worse. Over the next few nights, it kept coming back. Always closer. First by the trees. Then by the fence. Then by the garden shed. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I stopped talking to anyone unless I absolutely had to. My teachers thought I was on something. My mom asked if I was depressed. I didn't know what to tell her. Because every night, I'd lie awake in the dark and wait for it to arrive. And it always did. Same posture. Same silence. Just standing there. Watching. By the fourth night, I was afraid to look out the window. But I did anyway. And it was standing in the middle of our yard. Right where the grass is flattened in a circle now, like something heavy had been there for hours. I remember whispering to myself, "What do you want?" Just barely audible, as if saying it too loud would give it power. And in that moment, I swear the thing leaned forward. Not much. Just a tilt of the head. Like it had heard me. The worst part? No one else saw it. I brought my dad to the window the next night. Told him there was something out there. He stared for 5 minutes, and said it was just shadows. He patted my back and said I needed rest. Told me to lay off the late-night horror movies. Said I was getting in my own head. But I wasn't. Because later that night, I found the symbol. It was carved under my desk. Right into the wood. That same eye, round, wide, with those crooked, stilt-like lashes. Only this time, there was something new underneath. My name. Etched deep in sharp, deliberate cuts. Ethan. That was when I realized. The thing in the backyard wasn't just watching anymore. It was waiting. After I found the carving, I just stood there, crouched beneath my desk, trying to understand how something like that could exist in my room without me ever hearing a sound. The eye. The crooked legs. And my name, carved as if someone had taken their time with it, each stroke clean, deep, and purposeful. I didn't move for what felt like an hour. My legs started to go numb, but I couldn't make myself stand. I just kept staring at that symbol like if I looked away, it would somehow crawl off the wood and slither into my skin. Eventually, I pulled myself back up and sat on my bed, gripping the sheets so hard my knuckles ached. The air in the room felt thicker than usual, like the oxygen had been wrung out and replaced with something heavier. My ears started ringing. A high-pitched pressure that built in my skull until I thought my head would crack open. I knew I couldn't sleep, but I was afraid to leave the room. That night, the thing didn't appear outside, and that should have made me feel safe. But it didn't. Because that night, the house started to feel different. Not just old house creaks or settling wood. I mean aware. The way the hallway groaned beneath my feet sounded off. Too slow, like the floor was reacting a beat after I stepped. The light in the upstairs bathroom flickered for the first time in years, not the random blink of a bad bulb, but with an odd rhythm, like breathing. The air vents hummed quietly, but underneath the hum was something else, like a whisper trying to form a word it couldn't quite remember. I slept with the light on. Or tried to. I must have passed out sometime after 3. Because I woke up to complete darkness. I always leave my door cracked open, just enough to see the hallway light spill in from outside. But when I opened my eyes, the room was pitch black, like someone had filled it with ink. I scrambled out of bed, confused, reaching for my lamp switch. Nothing. Dead. I tried the ceiling light. Still nothing. That's when I realized my bedroom door was shut. I hadn't shut it. I stood there, hands still on the switch, staring at the door in the dark, trying to make sense of it. Then I saw something. Not in the room. In the gap beneath the door. A shadow. Not shaped like feet. Too thin. Too narrow. But long, longer than legs should be. Stretching from one side of the hallway to the other, unmoving. Like something was standing directly outside, blocking the light, waiting. I didn't make a sound. I didn't breathe. I watched that shadow for so long I started to wonder if I had imagined it. But then, it moved. Slowly. Smoothly. As if something impossibly tall was bending down to the floor, as if to peer under the door. And then, silence. When I finally worked up the nerve to open it, the hallway was empty. The light was still on. Nothing on the floor. Nothing out of place. But from that point on, I knew it wasn't outside anymore. It was in the house. The next morning, my mom said she'd heard someone walking around at 2 a.m. Thought it was me. I told her I'd stayed in my room. She didn't believe me. Said she heard the stairs creak. Said she heard something whispering. Something like my name. That afternoon, I tried to call Tyler again. Still no answer. So I walked to his house. His mom answered the door with tears in her eyes. She said he hadn't eaten in 2 days. That he barely spoke. That last night he stood in his room facing the corner for hours, completely still, muttering about the legs. About how they bend wrong. How they watch when you sleep. She told me she had to take him to the hospital. I didn't tell her about the symbol under my desk. I didn't tell her that the thing wasn't visiting anymore. Because last night, I'd woken up in the dark, and I could hear it breathing right next to my bed. I didn't scream when I heard it, the breathing, even though every instinct in my body was screaming for me to run. It was the kind of breath you don't hear with your ears but feel in your chest, like your lungs are syncing up with something that shouldn't have any. Slow. Measured. Wet. It was so close that I could feel a pressure in the air beside my face, like something massive was hovering there, just out of reach, waiting for me to acknowledge it. But I didn't move. I stayed frozen in bed, eyes clenched shut, fists gripping the sheets so tightly I could feel my nails cutting into my palms. It kept breathing. Not fast. Not angry. Just patient. It felt like hours before the sound stopped, but when I finally opened my eyes, the room was still pitch dark. No silhouette. No footprints. No signs of anything. But I knew, deep down, in the marrow of my bones, that it had been right there beside me. Closer than it had ever been. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Or the next. Things in the house started changing in ways I couldn't ignore. The mirror in the upstairs hallway developed a crack, long and jagged, that hadn't been there the day before. It wasn't from heat or pressure. The glass looked like it had been cut from the inside. Not broken, carved. My phone stopped working. At first, I thought it was the signal. But when I picked it up, the screen glitched in a way I've never seen before. The image stuttered, smeared, and in the distortion, for just a split second, I saw it. That eye again. That same grotesque, inhuman symbol that Tyler and I had seen carved into the cabin wall. It blinked, and then the phone went black. I threw it across the room and didn't bother picking it up. The lights in the kitchen started turning off by themselves. I'd flick them on, walk away, and come back 30 seconds later to find everything in complete darkness. At first, I blamed the breaker, but nothing else in the house was affected. Just the kitchen. Just that one room. And always, that feeling. That watching. It followed me now, even in daylight. I started seeing flashes of the symbol, in the grain of the wood floor, in the patterns on my bedsheets, once even in the condensation on the bathroom mirror. Just for a moment, like it wanted to remind me that I hadn't imagined any of it. That this wasn't a nightmare. This was happening. One night, I heard something in the vents. Scraping. Not like mice. Too slow. Too deliberate. Like claws being dragged in a circle, again and again, making sure I heard it. I pulled the vent cover off the ceiling in my room the next morning, thinking maybe there was a raccoon or something caught in there. But what I found wasn't an animal. It was a single piece of paper. Folded twice. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a drawing. Pencil. Smudged. Rushed. Almost childlike. But there was detail in the wrong places. The paper showed a figure. Tall. Thin. Towering. Legs like crooked stilts. No arms. Just a face, no features except for those sunken, black voids where the eyes should be. Underneath it, written in handwriting I didn't recognize but somehow felt familiar, were 3 words. You brought it. I dropped the paper like it burned me. Because suddenly, everything made sense. Tyler had smeared his blood on that symbol as a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a calling. An offering. Maybe not intentional. Maybe he didn't believe in anything. But that cabin had been waiting. Watching. And when his blood touched the carving, it wasn't him it attached to. It was me. Maybe because I was afraid. Or maybe because I believed in it, even just for a second. And now, it was here. Living in the walls. Beneath the floorboards. In the black corners of my bedroom ceiling. I started hearing whispers. Not full words at first. Just fragments. Breathy syllables that dissolved the moment I tried to focus on them. Like it was teasing me with the edge of a language I wasn't meant to understand. But one night, as I walked past the hallway mirror, I finally heard something clearly. It wasn't coming from behind me. It was coming from the reflection. And it said my name. Just once. Not like a question. Like a statement. Like a promise. I stopped using mirrors after that. I covered the hallway one with a blanket. Taped paper over the bathroom mirror. Flipped over the hand mirror on my desk. But even without seeing it, I felt it. That sensation of being reflected, echoed back by something that wasn't me. Like there was another Ethan somewhere in the house now, one who blinked half a second too late. I started forgetting things. Small things at first, the day of the week, what class I had first period. Then bigger things. I'd find cereal in the fridge. My shoes in the bathroom sink. Once, I woke up sitting on the living room floor, both feet blistered and bleeding, even though I had no memory of ever leaving my bed. My fingernails had dirt under them, like I'd been digging. I asked my mom if I'd gone out during the night. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, then just shook her head and said I needed more rest. But I knew what she wasn't saying. She'd heard me. She'd seen me walking the hallways in the early hours, staring at the walls, speaking in a voice too low for her to understand. But she was afraid to say it out loud, because she didn't want it to be real. Neither did I. But it was. The house had become something else. It didn't breathe. It listened. It waited. There were pockets of silence now, places where even sound didn't exist. The corner of the stairwell. The narrow closet in the upstairs hallway. The space beneath my bed. If I left my phone recording in any of those places overnight, it would come back with 2 hours of static, followed by a faint whisper that always said the same thing. He is becoming. I stopped sleeping altogether. Nights became stretches of gray hours where time seemed to fold in on itself. Shadows lengthened where they shouldn't. Lights flickered even when they were unplugged. Once, the lamp in my room turned on, slowly, like a dimmer dial being twisted, revealing the eye symbol, drawn in dozens of small scratches all over the inside of my closet door. Each one slightly different. Each one watching. I told myself I was losing it. That this was some kind of breakdown. Maybe trauma. Maybe stress. I tried convincing myself that if I just destroyed the symbol, maybe it would stop. Maybe it would break whatever had been opened. So I unscrewed the closet door from its hinges, dragged it out to the yard, and burned it in the fire pit behind our house. It screamed. Not loud. Not with sound. With air. With pressure. The fire buckled inward as if being sucked into itself. The smoke curled the wrong way, down instead of up, and for a few seconds the flames turned black. Not dark red. Not gray. Black. Like holes in the world. Then it went still. I thought it was over. Until I went back inside and saw the ashes trailing across the floor. They led to my room. When I stepped inside, my bed was gone. Not moved. Not stolen. Just not there. The carpet where it had been was untouched. No indentation. No mess. As if it had never existed. As if the house had simply decided it no longer belonged. I stood in the doorway, unable to breathe, unable to move, until something caught my eye. A single word, carved into the floor where the bed used to be. Soon. That was the first night I cried. Not out of fear, not exactly. But because I finally understood what was happening. It wasn't trying to haunt me. It was trying to erase me. Piece by piece. And I was letting it. Because a part of me, deep down, had started to believe that I deserved it. After all, I brought it. I didn't plan to go back to the cabin. In fact, I promised myself I never would. But after the house burned my bed out of existence, after it whispered my name from the mirror and carved symbols beneath my skin and bruises I didn't remember getting, I knew I had to do something. Tyler was the only other person who had seen the symbol. He'd touched it. Bled on it. He had to know something. But when I got to his house, I found it empty. Not abandoned, just wrong. The windows were open, though the air outside was thick with humidity. The lights were on in every room. The back door hung crooked on its hinges. No one answered when I knocked, so I let myself in. The house felt hollow, like the walls had been scooped out and replaced with something quieter. I walked through it slowly, calling Tyler's name, but there was no sound. Not even the creak of floorboards beneath my feet. It was like the house didn't want to echo anymore. His bedroom door was closed. I paused before opening it, listening. Then I heard it. Scratching. Not frantic, not panicked. Just rhythmic, steady. Like someone carving into wood, or bone, very, very slowly. I opened the door. Tyler wasn't there. But the walls, they were covered. Symbols. Hundreds of them. each one the eye. Some larger than I was. Some so small I couldn't make them out from where I stood. All drawn in different materials, pencil, ash, dirt. And blood. Too much blood. Dry brown smears arcing across the walls, looping over themselves, like someone had been moving in a trance. In the center of the room sat Tyler's old spiral notebook. Its cover was torn. The pages stuck together with something I didn't want to touch. But I opened it anyway. There were no journal entries. No words. Just page after page of the eye. Then, halfway through, a single line. I think it was always meant for you. My hands started shaking. I dropped the notebook and backed out of the room. Something in the air had shifted, the kind of shift that happens just before a storm breaks. The house groaned. The temperature plummeted. The walls felt like they were leaning in, just slightly, like they'd been holding their breath and were ready to exhale. I ran. Outside, everything looked the same, too same. The trees hadn't moved. The grass didn't sway. Even the clouds above were frozen in place, like a paused movie. I didn't hear birds. I didn't hear insects. Just my own breath and the low hum that had begun following me everywhere, rising from the ground beneath my feet like it was coming from the bones of the earth. I didn't want to go to the cabin. But I had to. Because something was waiting. Not for me to find it. But for me to remember. It took hours to get there. The woods felt deeper than I remembered, as if the trees had grown closer together. Thicker. More sentient. The path I swore we took was gone, and in its place were rows of trees that leaned in unnatural angles, as if twisted by some massive, invisible force. When I finally saw the cabin, it didn't look abandoned anymore. It looked lived in. Not repaired, still broken, still sagging on one side, but aware. The windows were too dark, the doorway too wide. The wind didn't pass through it. It stopped at the threshold like it knew better. Inside, everything was where we'd left it. The broken furniture. The scattered pages. The blood smear on the wall where Tyler had touched the eye. Except now, there were more symbols. Dozens more. All circling the original eye. All pointing inward. And below it, carved into the wood with an unnatural precision, was something new. My full name. Ethan R. Calloway. It didn't just know me. It claimed me. I backed away, heart pounding, when something snapped beneath my foot. I looked down. A finger. Dried. Shriveled. As if it had been preserved in salt and shadow. The nail was cracked, stained red. Around it, a ring of soot. A circle. The same size as the one I'd found in my backyard. That's when I realized. This thing doesn't follow you. It roots in you. Like a seed. It waits. And when you feed it, with belief, with fear, with blood, it begins to bloom. And the worst part? You can't dig it out. Because it isn't in the walls. Or the cabin. Or even the woods. It's in your mind. It becomes you. And by the time you notice the difference, it's already too late. When I got back home from the cabin, everything looked the same, but it wasn't. The trees around our house leaned in ever so slightly, like they'd heard something I hadn't. The shadows pooled in corners where no light ever touched, and the house, our plain, quiet house, had begun to hum. Not audibly. Not at first. It was deeper than that. A hum in my bones. A low vibration in my teeth. Like the kind of noise you don't hear but feel pressing against your nerves. My mom barely looked at me anymore. I think she could sense it, the thing that was blooming inside me. I'd try to speak to her, and she'd flinch, just slightly, like she was hearing something I wasn't saying aloud. She'd glance over my shoulder when I entered the room, like she was looking for someone else. And sometimes I caught her staring at me like she didn't recognize me at all. I stopped sleeping entirely. My dreams had turned inside out, nothing but endless, echoing corridors with no ceiling and no floor. Just that sound. That steady, impossible hum. That breathless pressure. One night, I opened the door to my bedroom and found that the walls were gone. Not knocked down. Gone. In their place, a vast, black void stretching in every direction. My bed floated in the center of it, surrounded by the bare floorboards of my room. But everything beyond that was an infinite nothing, as if my entire world had been erased, save for the few square feet where I stood. I shut the door. The next night, I opened my closet and found the hallway inside. But not our hallway. The lights were off. The carpet was soaked. The wallpaper peeled in strips. And down at the far end, something was standing. Too tall. Too still. I didn't open the closet again after that. I stopped leaving my room altogether. Not because I felt safe there, but because the house had begun changing when I walked through it. Hallways rearranged themselves. Rooms looped. I'd step into the bathroom and find myself back at the front door, keys still in my hand from 2 days ago. Time began to unravel, peeling back in strips like old paint. My name was no longer mine. I found it etched in places I couldn't reach. Inside the microwave door. Under the glass of the picture frames. Scratched into the ceiling. Always the same, that I, and beneath it, Ethan R. Calloway. One night, I stood in the kitchen holding a knife. Not because I wanted to use it, but because I didn't remember picking it up. My hands moved before my mind did. My legs walked before I told them to. I'd pass mirrors and catch myself smiling, even when my face felt cold and dead inside. There were moments, small and terrifying, where I wasn't sure I was the one behind my own eyes anymore. It wasn't just watching me now. It was becoming me. That night, I found something beneath my bed again. The original carving was still there, weathered now, deeper somehow. But next to it, something new had appeared. Scratched faintly into the floorboards. Almost shy. You're ready. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the hallway and stared at my bedroom door. It pulsed. Just slightly. Like it was breathing. And I realized the final truth. The one I had been circling since the day Tyler smeared his blood on that symbol. It was never about the forest. It was never about the cabin. It was always about invitation. The moment you see it, really see it, it begins to move in. Not like a spirit or a curse. Not something you fight off with salt or sage. No. It's quieter than that. Slower. It takes root in your fear. It wraps itself around your memories. It whispers until its voice becomes your thoughts. And then, it waits. Because you will break. And when you do, when your grip on yourself slips for just one moment, it steps in. And you become the invitation for someone else. I don't know where Tyler is now. I don't know if what's left of me is still mine. But if you ever see it, something too tall, too still, watching from the garden, don't look at it. Don't speak to it. Don't believe in it. Because the moment you do, it learns your name. And once it knows your name, it comes inside.